Well, today we may clarify some problems that you've had in reading just a chapter at a time and then forgetting what you read in the previous chapter. In chapter 27, we saw that because Jacob was blessed by his father and he had not only gotten Esau's birthright but now his blessing, we kind of believe that because Rebekah's asking Jacob to leave, that he's fleeing from Esau to keep from being killed. And yet in chapter 28 it makes it very clear that Isaac sends Jacob off with his blessing, not to try to protect him from Esau, but to find a wife, but not a wife of a Canaanite, a wife that would be equally yoked with him. Let me say that again for you. Just as Abraham had desired for Isaac to have a wife that would be equally yoked with him, so also Isaac had the desire for Jacob to have a wife that would be equally yoked for him. Parents, stop and think about it. How often do you pray that your children and your grandchildren will find mates that are equally yoked, who will come alongside of them spiritually as a blessing instead of a burden? That's the case for Abraham, as he desired for Isaac to have a perfect wife, and just as Isaac wanted Jacob to have God's perfect wife for him. It's quite interesting, isn't it? You see, I don't think these are just stories in the Bible. I believe these are events that point to us some principles for us to live by. And I believe that we should be praying for our children and our grandchildren to find equally yoked mates that will not be a hindrance but will be a blessing. Also interesting to note as we go through this section of Scripture in just verses 1 through 9, that Esau saw and heard the actions of Isaac and his sending off Jacob to find a wife, and perhaps desiring to be back in his father's blessings, he takes an action which probably was meant well, but it turns out to be even worse. Because he decides, well, if his father wants Jacob to have a non-Canaanite wife, then I'll go to Ishmael and find a wife through his lineage. After all, Ishmael was Abraham's son. And so if it pleases my dad that Jacob find a wife that comes from that lineage, then that might put me back in good standing. Now, we come across a principle that I used to teach in pre-marriage counseling and parenting, which is not only should we want our children to have equally matched mates, ones that believe just as our children believe, but what happens when they date and they find somebody that is a pagan, a heathen, a non-believer? When we demand or we try to control our children away from those people, especially once they've already begun to date one, very often the defiance and the rebellion and I will have my own way because I'm approaching adulthood or I am an adult, they drive them further into the arms of those that perhaps are not equally yoked. Now let me just share this principle with you. If you find yourself in that situation with a child or a grandchild, rather than just condemning that relationship, bring that relationship closer. Now, why do I say that? Well, first of all, they've already found a fascination with this person who you may perceive as not being the perfect mate. But if you bring that person closer, your child is more likely to see the faults and the problems with an unequally yoked person. So if rather than treating rudely and keeping away from the family this unequally yoked dating relationship, bring it closer, involve them with the family, involve them and expose them more so that their true traits and personalities will show up. Now, don't say, "See, I told you so," in the middle of all of this. Let your child discover for themselves the ugliness of a pagan or a non-believer. How? Sometimes in doing what I'm suggesting, a double blessing comes in the fact that you've exposed this unbeliever to Christianity and to Christian values. And there's a very good likelihood that this unbeliever will get saved. That's exactly what happened in my case. It was by being with believers that I got saved. And while the girls that I dated that were believers shouldn't have wanted to date me, it was through the fact that the parents were wise enough not to drive me away or to drive their daughters into my arms. They exposed me to Christianity and to the gospel, and I got saved. So, worst case, your daughter or son sees the ugliness of a non-believer. Best case is that non-believer becomes a Christian through the influence of your family. And that's my thought for the day. Read chapter 28, verses 1 through 9, and see if this principle might not be a good principle to think about. But also feel sorry for Esau because he married into a family that was destined to become non-Christians and destined to become a thorn in the side of Christians for generations to come. Good intentions often lead to problems, and Esau had good intentions of trying to win over his father's favor, but unfortunately spiritually, because of God's plan for the two sons of Abraham, that this was not to be. Have a great day, and don't put the wrong emphasis on Christmas. This is the time for Lottie Moon offering. Be generous with your offering to Lottie Moon. Recently, our pastor here in Landrum challenged the members based on a man that had been a member of Landrum for a long time, who said he would never give less to Lottie Moon than he would give to all of the rest of his family in Christmas presents value. So if he was going to spend $500 on his family, he would give nothing less than $500 to Lottie Moon. I think that's a good test for us. If we truly want to evangelize the world, maybe we should be sure that we put our priorities, especially in the area of our stewardship, on giving generously to the missionaries that are out doing the work that we perhaps can't do because we're not able to go to those places. So give generously to Lottie Moon, to missionaries, to those causes that are expanding the gospel throughout the world. Now that's my thought. God bless you and have a great day.